Welcome to Magic Bricks Now, India's first property channel. You're watching the Urban Debate. I'm Faye D'Souza. The real estate regulator is a reality. Congratulations to every home buyer watching at home. We now have a regulator. These are the headlines. The Real Estate Regulation and Development Act has been notified. The states now have 6 months to formulate their rules and implement RERA. Industry, on the other hand, seeks more clarity on the rules. It says prices could go up in the short term. And the Big Magic Bricks Now exclusive, no FSI hike for Mumbai suburbs. The revised development plan instead proposes FSI hike of premium FSI between Colaba and Mahim. It's finally here. The Real Estate Regulation and Development Bill has become an act. The centre notified 69 of its 92 sections of the act on Sunday. Remember, Magic Bricks Now were the first to report this on Thursday last week. The sections that have been notified empower states to set up their respective regulators, their appellate tribunals and their adjudicating officers in the next 1 year. Now, this means that within a year of today, every state in this country will have a real estate regulator. They will also have a special court that will hear only cases between developers and buyers. So what are the changes that lie ahead for you and me as home buyers? Will it actually take prices up? Will it solve all of the problems? I have such a stellar panel put together. Niranjan Hiranandani, Chairman Managing Director of the Hiranandani Group, joins me right now. Sanjay Dutt, Managing Director India at Cushman Wakefield. Anshuman Magazine, Managing Director CBRE. Rohit Gera, Managing Director at Gera Developments. And Naveen Raheja, Managing Director of Raheja Developers. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Mr. Hiranandani, a year before we have a regulator in every state, I'm pleased and I'm thrilled as a home buyer that this change is going to happen, because it changes everything. It changes the amount of information we have as home buyers before we buy a home, and it changes where we approach, whom we approach if we have a problem. This couldn't have been better, couldn't have come at a better time. What's your reaction to the big announcement that we've had yesterday?
Excellent. I think we were waiting for it. It had to come sooner or later. I think it's there. It's wonderful because it brings about what we call transparency to the home buyer. And I think that's a very, very big positive which is going to happen in the industry. It's been the demand of the consumer. It's been the demand of the government. And I think also the financial institutions are extremely happy about it. Yes, but you must remember one thing, that this is a all India action, which means there are going to be hundreds and thousands of people looking after the regulation. And that's a danger point which we see, because it depends on the quality of the regulator to be able to manage that. 70% funds are going to be locked up now in the real estate business. This means also that more funds will be needed by industry from the banking or other financial system. But yes, I agree with you. It was needed and it's here.
I know there's a lot of nervousness in the industry right now with a 70% escrow account. Now, I want to explain to our viewers what that means. It means basically that developers, when they collect money from you, when you buy something and you pay money, whether that's construction linked or otherwise, that 70% of that money has to go into a separate bank account. The money has to be used only for the construction of the home that you have bought. And you know, just to illustrate to our panel right now what this means to average home buyers, we went out onto the street today. We spoke to regular people about how they feel and what sort of an impact they hope this real estate regulator will make. And I want you to hear these voices. Let's play out one of those voices. And I want the people on the panel to understand what the average citizen thinks of the real estate industry. Let's play out a couple of those bites.
लो पास हो जाता है तो सबके लिए, जो आम पीपल है, जो लोग हैं, उनके लिए अच्छा होगा, क्योंकि हम भी अगर बिल्डिंग बनती है तो वो बोलते हैं कि जो 20% है वो आप पहले भर दो, फिर वो 3 साल लगाते हैं, 4 साल लगाते हैं, कभी कभी बनता भी नहीं, 10 साल भी लगते हैं। तो क्या हमारा पैसा तो उसमें लगा ही हुआ ही है। हम फिर बिल्डर के लोग वहाँ ऑफिस में जाके चक्कर लगाते हैं कि भाई कभी बनेगा, क्या होगा क्या होगा। इससे क्या है कि हमारा नुकसान है। हम तो जानते हैं कि हम हमारे सपनों का हमने घर लिया हुआ है अपना खुद का, कभी बनेगा, कभी कभी उसके चक्कर में हमारा 10 साल निकल जाता है। तो अगर ये लो बनता है तो जो आम जनता होती है उनके लिए बेटर है।
Each one of us has invested at least 1.5 crore which is 80 to 90% of the actual cost. And through you, I mean, thanks to you that you came here. Through you, I want to tell the Haryana Chief Minister as well the central government. You are saying beti bachao, beti padhao. मुझे बेटी को पढ़ाया, डॉक्टर बनाया, मैंने पैसे इकट्ठे करके लगाए. What are you doing? You are not including even in RERA the existing projects. This is ridiculous.
But there's a lot of angst really among home buyers, and there's certainly a crisis of faith right now with the real estate industry. This is a bill that will change all of that. And this is my question to the developers on the panel, Rohit Gera, Niranjan Hiranandani. I agree that it's a harsh bill. I agree that maybe 70% escrow is something you're going to have to get used to. But it's something that this industry needs, because the number of cases of developers having diverted money to something else, used the money to buy land, and now unable to finish their projects, that outweighs anything else you might show us on the other side.
I think this bill with the 70% is now becoming law, and like you said, we have to get used to it. We can draw the money out in proportion to the work completed. All it means is developers will have to be much better capitalized going forward. A lot of people got caught up in the cycle of greed, where you can easily sell homes with putting a board up as soon as you sometimes don't even have the rights on the land. Take that money, multiply it. Finally, there's a check to this. And one of the things which you said earlier, and what Mr. Hiranandani said earlier, is that politicians and the consumer and the officials all want the Real Estate Regulatory Act. I also suspect that all the professional developers across the country, the guys who are doing a good job, are very happy to see the fly-by-night operators be weeded out of this system. They're the ones who are giving the industry a bad name, and it's about time that we clean this whole industry up.
Niranjan Hiranandani, this bill, even though it's harsh, and I accept that it's harsh, it's just necessary to clean up this system.
I agree with you. It was needed. I think the demand was there from the consumers. The demand was there from the overall marketplace. So it did come. We all know that the builders are going to have a difficult time, but that is one side of the coin. But the number of people who have had a bad time are so high that I think it was needed for the government to bring it into place. Now, I think in equity and fairness, a balancing act will have to be maintained by the government in order to see that this is implemented fairly. Because, as I mentioned to you earlier
fairly.
in my
what do you mean by implemented fairly?
Talk with you, we had a very good law in urban land ceiling, and we had a bad implementation. So we need to be very cautious from the government side to see that this implementation is done fairly, squarely, and in the interest of everybody. If it is done properly, I'm sure things will fall into place, except that the banking funds requirements in terms of companies which are stressed, I don't know how they're going to sort out that problem, because if they are already stressed, then for the new monies also to be locked up, how are the companies going to get additional funds? These are quite a few companies, and I'm really worried for them. I think, but by and large, if you take an overall position of the industry, I think it will be okay.
Let's focus on this one thing, Sanjay, that for those companies right now who are stressed and who are unable to raise funds to finish projects that are stuck, it's obvious that it will become even more difficult if they have to put aside 70% in escrow. Does that mean a shakedown? Will we have far fewer developers in a year's time than we have right now? And what impact will that have on home prices?
Certainly, this has already happened, because last 2 years, because the markets have been somewhat lukewarm, in some cases quite bad, tier 3 developers or tier 2 developers are joining with tier 1 developers across the country or forging partnerships to basically ensure that they deliver on their promises and they sustain themselves in this difficult time. In the short term, while the inventory remains high from the consumer's point of view, the number of launches and the projects will come down, no doubt. And of course, it may continue till medium term as well, because a lot of land aggregators, a lot of developers, or a lot of corporates who had aspirations to become developers have suddenly realized that this will not be an easy game. The kind of discipline and the governance that this business model today, this business demands, it will not be easy given, of course, the marketing dynamics of the real estate sector. So I think partnerships will be the way forward. The M&As will be the way forward. Developers will get out from non-strategic assets, some who are over leveraged or who have too much inventory of land to begin with. They will, divest some of their non-strategic and stick to the ones which they can deliver. So I think over a period of time, you will see that initially would be a short-term setback. So over a medium to long term, when the cycle will adjust to market dynamics, this will become a level playing field for all developers. So I think it will be a good, like Niranjan and Rohit and everybody else have said, but short term, be prepared for some setbacks.
Okay, short term, be prepared for some setbacks. I'm looking at this purely as a home buyer. And there are two sides to this coin. One is, of course, the impact it will have on the short-term market, where I do realize a lot of developers will start to rush through projects and finish them in time before the regulator comes in. So there are fewer things that come under the purview of the regulator. On the other hand, if prices do move up, like Sanjay predicted, after the regulator comes in, it's like an insurance policy, because here's someone who's doing all the homework for you, who's making sure that the approvals are in place, that the land titling is in place, who's making sure that I have all of that information available on a public website, and maybe I have to pay a higher price for that, but as a buyer, I'm prepared to do so, and I'm sure a lot of other buyers are prepared to do so. Anshuman Magazine, what sort of a price impact do you expect the regulator to have on the real estate market? Because now we have a specific date. Now we know that by the 1st of May next year, we'll all have regulators.
See, I personally don't see any price impact immediately, because the price is a factor or a function of the market, supply, demand, and how that works, what is happening to the economy, what is the purchasing power, how is the GDP growing, etc. So I don't see any impact on price immediately. However, I feel the regulator bill needs to be more balanced. I agree with Mr. Hiranandani when he talked about balance. Where my issue with the regulator bill is that there is no accountability of the government. So whilst this bill is going to be positive for the industry in the long term, I feel that it will bring confidence back to the consumer and institutions to put in money in real estate, because one of the big challenges, there are still buyers there, but one challenge is especially in some parts of the country, they don't have the confidence that they invest money. Will they get delivery at all, or will they get it on time? With the regulator bill, I think the consumers will have that confidence to invest money, as well as institutions, both foreign and domestic financial institutions will put in more money in the real estate sector than they're putting right now. So I feel that this bill is going to be very positive for the industry. It will attract more investment. However, it does need to be balanced. Government has to be accountable. Right now, the whole approval process takes so long, and the bill does not address that even the government agencies have to have some accountability, where they have to give approvals within a time-bound manner.
Anshuman,
and right now it is not really a balanced bill. Right. From that point of view.
All right, I'm picking up two things from your answer. One is you don't actually believe the prices will go up, and I know both Mr. Hiranandani and Rohit Gera will want to rebut that because they disagree with you. And as far as accountability of government is concerned, I'm going to come back to that. But first, Rohit Gera, respond to the fact that Anshuman believes even though there will be pressure on pricing from the developer's point of view, it's not a pressure you can pass on to customers because the market is just not strong enough at this point.
Well, Phil, look, let's first at least come to the conclusion that the costs for the developers will rise. If you have to give a 5-year defect liability period, and we've been doing that now for over 10 years, we know that there's a substantial cost to just this one aspect. The 70% escrow account will also affect cash flows and profitability. This too has a certain extra cost associated with it. So costs are bound to go up. The question then is, at what stage can those costs be actually passed on to the end consumer? And I suspect that this will happen at a different pace for different markets and different sub-markets across the country. If there are markets where the demand supply is closer, like there are certain areas, even around Pune, for example, the price rise will happen sooner. If there are highly oversupplied markets, the developer is going to have to bear this cost for a much longer period. But eventually, it's a matter of time before all this has to eventually get passed on to the end consumer.
Mr. Hiranandani, respond to that. All of this has to eventually pass on to the end consumer. And I want to focus on what Anshuman said about demand and supply. Now, agreed, every time a regulator comes into a new market, there is a blip, a year or so of what Rohit is saying, which is chaos, the fact that the industry needs to absorb new costs and adjust. But I'm assuming that even if we see a higher price, over a period of time, things will even out. If we're looking at a higher price for a year or maybe 2 years, over a period of time, that should even out and a certain level of normalcy should be achieved. I can't imagine that a regulator will come in and we're looking at higher costs for the rest of our lives.
No, I don't think so. I think one of the objectives which the government has had, at least in Maharashtra, has been the fact that they need to create much more affordable housing, and that is the direction in which they are going ahead with increased in FSI, one, the speed or ease of doing business, two. That's the direction which Mr. Fadnavis has given to the municipal commissioners. They've already come out with rules and regulations. But the most important part is Mr. Devendra Fadnavis in Maharashtra has brought the Right to Services Act, which means that the officers are now duty bound to sanction the building plans in 60 days. So a developer whose plans are not getting sanctioned, of course, it's a tricky thing because they could always make excuses for not sanctioning the building plans. But I think at some point of time, this is going to be held against the officers for the first time in the history of India, that they are bound to offer an explanation if the plans are not getting sanctioned in 60 days. This, of course, has been bypassed by many officers by rejecting plans for casual reasons and so on and so forth, and really not giving sanction to building plans. But I think the intent of government is positive. But as I said so before, it is we just have to watch and see whether the bureaucracy as a whole actually participates in the well-being of the state government, Mr. Fadnavis, and also plays ball. If they play ball, then the volume of material that will come into the market over a period of time will be large, and that will cause the prices to fall. But what Mr. Magazine just said is right, that in the short run there could be an increase in prices, because in the next 6 months, while all these approvals are taking place, after 6 months or so and before the 12 months of notification, people may have to stop selling because they will not have got the approvals in place. And if that time lag is too much in getting the approvals for all the projects by the regulator, then of course the prices will definitely go up.
In fact, just to respond to everything, Rohit, 1 second, I want to play out this bite, and this is the Urban Development Minister, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, speaking to Magic Bricks. Now, when we asked him about, local level corruption, this is what he had to say in terms of the fact that he first said local level corruption should be handled on the local level, but he did say that there will be a new system put into place on the 2nd of October for the cities of Mumbai and Delhi, removing all the element of human interaction from all permissions. And I want you to hear this, and then we'll talk more about how this will impact the prices of homes.
2nd October 2016, only online submission, only online permission, online submission. Even if you want to divert it from one agency to other agency, also online. That should be the line for everybody. The moment I say this will be a headline, but I am also aware in the newspaper, but I am also aware this headline will become a deadline for all of us. The highlight of this process will be a complete elimination of human interaction of the applicant with our urban local body, including online approvals of various kinds of no objection certificates. The time limit for all kinds of approval should be 30 days. Man to man, woman to woman contact should be avoided. So I may mention the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, Mumbai have achieved the streamlining of the building plans approvals. Now an application both the cities has to be applied online.
Everything applied online, all permissions given online, no interaction with any sort of human. This is the municipal corporations of Delhi and of Mumbai. NOC is given in 30 days and a deadline of the 2nd of October before this is actioned. This is the Urban Development Minister himself. Now, let's assume this can happen before the 2nd of October. I want anybody from the panel to now tell me what's wrong. Now, if the approvals can be given in less than 30 days, with no human interaction. Now what's standing in the way of the regulator? Now what's lopsided about that bill? Now why can't we have a balanced regulator without any sort of hiccups? Anshuman Magazine. Okay, Rohit Gera, go ahead.
Hey, look, I think some of the things in the way that the bill is, the way the act is drafted, asks for you to provide information about people who are generally associated with the project. Why was it not just simple and clear to say name of the architect, name of the contractor, name of the following 4 people? Again, these are areas where if you don't, am I supposed to give the name of the security person who's responsible for the project?
Rohit Gera, let me just make this clear to you. We do know, of course, that every state regulator has 6 months now to iron out the rules of their specific state, given the fact that we both know, and everybody on this panel knows, that real estate is a very specific, it's a very local subject, it's a very local business, which is why every state is going to have to write out their own rules. So obviously there's a certain amount of grey area in the bill. The states are going to colour between those lines. I don't understand why the bill will need to be that specific. How would we ever get it through Parliament if it was that specific, Rohit?
Our big concern is how the grey, look, the reason why we have corruption in the country is because of the grey areas, right? If we didn't have laxity and if we didn't have discretion in people's hands, we wouldn't have a corruption problem across the country. So the big concern here is, as long as those things are addressed and closed, I'm saying we have no problem. But right now, the way the act is drafted, it does have some of those areas open. So if as you say, it'll all be closed and it'll be done, there's no problem. I just want to cover one other quick point, is that what we've been saying is that the regulator, they have 12 months to come up with the regulator. While that is correct, the act in terms of clause 20, what it actually says is that the state government shall designate an interim authority, and I'm presuming that that's expected immediately. And that would generally be the person who would then write out all the rules and stuff. So in reality, the authority should be expected much sooner than the 12 months that we're talking about.
Of course, Rohit, the 12 months is an outside deadline. We know the cities, there are some states like Maharashtra that are ready and possibly see a regulator much faster. And my suggestion to the industry and everybody on this panel is that if you feel there are grey areas in the bill, that there's no reason why you shouldn't be interacting with your respective state governments to fill out those grey areas and clear them up. But Naveen Raheja, this is in reaction to the market in the NCR, which, let's be honest, is in far worse shape than the rest of the country. Now, while there's a fair amount of argument about the fact that the escrow account might be too high at 70%, there might be a lot of other things that are grey. The truth is, especially in the NCR, this was more than necessary. In fact, I think it's late.
No, in fact, tell you the truth, as far as it goes to Haryana state, they had already been taking escrow account for internal development works. So although the total amount was 30%, now it has become 70%. So at least,
that's an illustration of the fact that 30% was just not enough.
Creating an escrow account. Now it is 70%, but at least we are already in the system. We already know that this is to be done this way, and it's a welcome step because now taking out money from one project to another project will become difficult, and I think the developers will be more focusing upon completion of the projects which are on hand. So I look at it as a very, very positive step, and I will look at it other way also, that authorities in Haryana particularly, and Delhi is actually controlled by Delhi Development Authority, and Noida is controlled by Noida Development Authority, and Greater Noida Development Authority, and Ghaziabad Development Authority. So actually all these people have their own systems and setups in place. So putting a regulator now will make the things at least, that people become accountable in one system. So once the system gets streamlined, that now multiplicity of actions, of accountabilities, of reaching out to different forums, and customers also getting confused where to go, what to do. All these things actually will become, I think, very much transparent,
Raheja, I'll tell you what,
clear, streamlined, and
I'll tell you what the buyers in the NCR will appreciate most about this bill: the appellate tribunal. The fact that there will be a court in the NCR that will listen and hear only cases between developer and buyer, and they no longer will have to go to consumer court and then to the National Commission.
Very
That's the thing that will be most welcome in the NCR, because I've spent the last 8 days talking to buyers from the NCR, and it's appalling the stories that we hear. I want you to hear some of those stories. I'm going to play another one of those bites that we got from the NCR region, what people are expecting from the developer, from the regulator. I'm going to ask my producers to play that bite so the whole panel can hear it.
This project was launched somewhere in 2009. I booked the villa in year 2009, and now it is 2016. 7th year is running. Still I have not got the possession. And this is the story with majority of the home buyers. There are around 267 villas, and out of which majority of the houses are incomplete. The inside is incomplete, the outside is incomplete. There is no water supply, there is no electricity supply, there is no garden, there is no club. All that which was promised, nothing is ready. 7 years have passed. How long more we have to wait?
जो पहले नियमावली थी बिल्डर की, जब उसके ऊपर ज़्यादा आरटीआई लग गए, जैसे सर ने लगाई, हमने लगाई और भी कई लोगों ने आरटीआई लगाई है, तो जो इनके मापदंड के अनुरूप नहीं है, अब बिल्डर लोगों ने क्या करा है कि एक नई पॉलिसी निकाली है कि ये जो फ्लैट हमने बनाया, जो नक्शा हमने बनाया, ये गलत बन गया है, अब इसको हम सही तरीके से बनवाने के लिए अथॉरिटी में एक नई एप्लीकेशन लगा दी है। इसके खिलाफ हमारी जो है एप्लीकेशन लगी हुई है। अब ये चाह रहे हैं कि जो हमसे गलत बन गए हैं उस चीज़ को हम ठीक करा लें। मतलब इस तरह से दोनों की सांठगांठ बन चुकी है कि जो हमसे गलतियां हो गई है, अब अथॉरिटी उसको जो है नए सिरे से अप्रूव कर दे।
Now tell me, anybody on the panel, if this was not more than necessary, and if there's anything right now, any sort of discomfort that the industry is feeling, that's possibly just bad karma from all of the pain that's been inflicted on customers at this point. And I think that the appellate tribunal, if it actually can move cases in less than 60 days, that would be, from my point of view, the most welcome move. Anshuman Magazine, you said it was a lopsided bill. I invite you to respond to those home buyers who've been waiting 7, 8, sometimes 10 years for their homes. It's not a lopsided bill to them, Anshuman.
No, sorry. I didn't say it was lopsided bill. I said it wasn't fully balanced. And I also mentioned that this bill is going to be a big game changer for the industry. Like I mentioned, that there will be more investment coming in. I'd also mentioned that one of the big challenges consumers face today and why they're not buying, and why one of the reasons why sales are down, is because they don't have confidence will they get the projects on time, or even if get the projects at all. And therefore it will give make a big difference, and there no doubt there are many consumers who have suffered. What I mentioned is there is no accountability as far as the government is concerned. So what I really want is that the approval process, now Mr. Hiranandani mentioned in Maharashtra they've improved this, which is a great move. If the approval process is made simple and time bound, then there is no excuse a developer can give that he was not able to deliver the project on time because of the government. That's all I want, is that it should be, the government should be accountable, like the Mumbai city is doing, that there is a time-bound approval process. Also, what Rohit mentioned earlier, that the laws have to be clear. If you do online approval process, which is a great move, but then you still have to have very specific, clear laws, so there is no ambiguity as much as possible. It can't be 100%, no law is, so that there is no option for anybody to exploit that law. And lastly, what Mr. Hiranandani mentioned, implementation. So we can do this online, we can do many other things. Implementation will be the key. And end of the day, the consumer has to be protected. Many consumers have suffered, no doubt. But at the same time, the people who are, the bill should not be an impediment that the developers or anybody else coming in will not come in. So any industry in India, be it telecom, be it auto industry, has done well because of competition, has done well because more people came in, competition was there, they improved quality, improved delivery. But this bill should not be that harsh that it does not encourage more people to come into development.
Is it really that harsh that it will not encourage the industry to grow?
That was my point. Otherwise, this bill will be a big change.
Anshuman, is it really that harsh that it will not encourage the industry to grow? If you've read the bill and you turn to the last couple of pages, and I want to bring your attention here to page number 20 of the bill, in clause 32, it actually points out that the bill, the authority shall, in order to facilitate growth and promotion of a healthy, transparent, efficient, competitive real estate sector, make recommendations to the government to create a transparent grievance redressal mechanism against local government. Yes, Rohit.
That's the point. It's only recommendatory.
But it's
That's
a start.
The whole point.
But it's a start. It's a start. If we're talking about the fact that this is a regulator that's meant also to look after the health of the industry, to make sure it's competitive, to make sure that it's a good, well-rounded, robust industry. It's not just there, like Mr. Venkaiah Naidu said, to strangulate the industry. It's there to also grow the industry. Like all regulators are both development and regulatory authorities.
So the concern really is, and I think the bill and the act has actually come in place because of the misdeeds of a large number of developers, and really some of the actions that some of them have taken is truly disgraceful. I think as a developer, personally, I'm ashamed of some of the things that some of the developers have done, and we're from the same industry. We need to stand up and accept that. Having said that, the concern now is that the pendulum has swung so far the other way that we're asked, as per the bill, to give an undertaking and an affidavit saying that we will obtain all necessary clearances from the government as promised to the customer.
Right.
While the approval is provided upfront, and I get that, things like plinth checking or the occupancy certificate is not at all in our control. Now, it's very easy for a government official, for a crooked government official, and hopefully there are less of those, to go home, log on, check out the website and say, what's the deadline that I've committed to my customer, and say, hey, you know what, if you don't pay me X amount, I'm going to delay your occupancy certificate.
Are you saying that this bill actually opens up of avenues of extortion from the local government? I'm
saying we are certainly concerned about the risk of that.
You're concerned about the risk of extortion from the local government or increased extortion. Niranjan Hiranandani, do you agree?
Not local government, I'm saying from some babu down the line, and it does happen and it can continue to happen, so the risk exists.
Niranjan Hiranandani, the risk of extortion from some babu down the line, do you agree that this bill opens you up to further risk?
Historically, every regulator can be an extortionist, but that's exactly what I meant when I said that there is always abuse that can happen by a regulator. That's why I mentioned earlier that you need a good regulator, and once you have a good regulator in place, which has happened in India, it's not that it has not happened, but you have to understand there are going to be hundreds of regulators all over the country because the country is so large. But if we can set the base of good regulators, especially in the metropolitan and larger areas, and set a good trend, I think that could be followed upon. As contradicted in the case of urban land ceiling, where the regulator was bad and created bad precedents and we had to scrap ULC. So we want the government to bring good regulators so that the problems of the people are sorted out. As you have said, the people are tired of the developers who have misused their powerful position, and that's why this regulatory bill has come. But we'd like to put this on an even keel and over a period of time maybe bring about regulations which will give more favorable position to the developers. But I guess we will have to prove our position before that can happen.
Yes, it's going to be a long wait. But in the meantime, Mr. Hiranandani, if the government, like it's intended to do, at least for Mumbai and Delhi, Rohit Gera and Pune is possibly going to have to wait a little longer than the 2nd of October. But if it can give you fully online permissions without any sort of human intervention whatsoever, within a 30-day deadline, does that not solve most of the problems?
The answer is yes. It does solve a lot of problems, but you have to understand that the bureaucracy has been so bad over a period of time, and they've gone into so much bad habits that's going to take a hard toil for them to turn their habits. Now, the long and short of it is, if the government's intent is good and strong, as we are seeing with Mr. Devendra Fadnavis and also the Municipal Commissioner of Greater Mumbai, I think there will be a turn of events as can possibly happen. So we are looking at that the consumers are happy and over a period of time the developers are also happy because their building plans are being quickly sanctioned, and the combination of two will bring about a large quantity of affordable housing. So we hope that over a period of time there's a win-win situation both for the consumers and the industry, and that is what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu is talking about. I hope his aspirations come true.
You know, Mr. Hiranandani, I want to react to what you said about the fact that the bureaucracy is going to take a really long time to work out of its bad habits, and it seems like the same thing to me with the industry. I'm not generalizing, but a large portion of it has been behaving badly for so long. There's going to be a long, hard toil to rid us of those bad habits as well, which is possibly why we need such a hard bill. Anshuman Magazine, you wanted to say something. Sanjay Dutt, you've been very quiet. Come in on the fact that while it is a hard bill, it was more than necessary.
नहीं बोल रहे थे बीच में कट हो गए.
Sanjay Dutt?
Can I? Yes. So if you ask any entrepreneur today, they will tell you that the hardship that they have to go through in doing business is so much that it has made them think repeatedly whether they want to continue doing business in India or not. And you should also realize that why this government at the center is continuously talking about ease of doing business, because they know that this country is suffering because of that. Businesses are not happening. There are a lot of corporates who are waiting with state industrial development corporations for allotment of land, and they don't have land. There are a lot of organizations which are waiting for approvals, and none of that is happening. Just the overall environment of doing business has become so difficult, and there are many departments that I don't want to name right now, that even if you do business, that it becomes difficult to actually manage your business. So let's step back and focus on real estate. If you were to talk about transitioning this environment where 30 to 60 days approval comes in across the country, in every state, in every department, yes, you're absolutely right. Then there is no excuse for developers or any entrepreneur to complain about it. But the reality is very different. Every time this country has banned liquor, tobacco, gutka, the reality is on the ground has been very different. Every time people have paid taxes or they made their disclosures, the reality on the ground has been very different. So, if you talk to an entrepreneur, the reality is very different. But I would say, I'm still believing in the story of this government, the intent of the government, and it's genuine. But we're still in this period of transition where we will still take 5 to 10 years minimum, where we will bring all the transparency at the government level, at department level, at center level, at state level, and of course the entrepreneurs and developers will also adjust to that new changing environment, and they will also then start disciplining themselves. So while we will cover that distance, but to expect that to happen because of this regulatory bill in next 12 months, I think is expecting too much too soon.
We're expecting too much too soon. Sanjay's challenge here is the ease of doing business, or the lack of it in the country, especially when it comes to construction. I'll accept that, the fact that we as a country, when it comes to construction permits, I think rank 183 out of 189 altogether. That's how low we rank in comparison to the rest of the world. But I want more voices on this channel, because it's a channel for home buyers. I want to play some more of those bites that we heard today in reaction to the new real estate regulator, and I want the panel to listen. Go ahead.
You pass how many ever bills, the person, unless and until he does not want to change, he can't change. Because bills, like there are so many bills being passed, but it's like people have become so smart that from any kind of bill they can cheat.
There was a lot of fraud going on, and this regulatory body will help out to all the people. This is very helpful to all the people. Fraud will not be there at all. This will be regulated by the body if it comes into the picture. Earlier what was happening is, builder used to sell the properties to many people. We common people doesn't know what exactly is happening, what the land is. So this is very helpful to the common people.
Yeah, there was a voice there that echoed what Sanjay Dutt said, which is basically you can pass as many laws as you want, but if the intention is to cheat and the intention is to not be honest, there's no bill that can really save anyone. Naveen Raheja, functioning out of the NCR region, what's your response to that? Can the NCR region be reformed by the real estate regulator?
Let me tell you one thing. Regulator cannot deliver the projects. If all over NCR the projects are delayed, I don't think that every builder is bad. These same builders have been doing very good jobs since last over 3 decades or even 4 decades.
Okay.
अगर 40 साल से आपने कोई सब timely deliveries कर रहे हैं, अच्छी quality बना रहे हैं, so suddenly what has gone wrong that all the projects are delayed and there is hue and cry all around.
Naveen Raheja, आप बताइए कि what has gone wrong now?
Cannot build projects. Let me, what has gone wrong actually is that number one, there have been too many authorities which have come and poked their nose into the project. They have stopped these projects midway. Everyone wants his own share out of the project, you know. So the number one basic problem is that you start a project, you get all your sanctions. When you are halfway, there is some authority or the other authority or some court or the other court which is coming in between, putting stay orders or putting new laws, new conditions on water, new conditions on environment. Somebody talking about now this area where you have half built the building, now this has become a nature conservation zone, you stop the work. You know, these are the basic issues. You don't give them, you stop water supply in between, you stop sand supply in between, aggregate supply in between, and you want builders to build. They cannot build without all these things, you know.
Mr. Raheja, there are still developers who have delivered homes in the NCR region.
The bill has not.
Mr. Raheja, there are still developers who have delivered homes in the NCR region without very substantial delay.
Yes, we have delivered. We have delivered projects, but we know how difficult it is. It is so difficult. There are so many fronts which are opened in front of you that instead of focusing upon quality and technology and making better buildings, economizing constructions, you are more focused upon defending on one front and the other front. And your teams are actually working for bushfire than to actually do construction. So now those who have succeeded despite running of these bushfires all around you, you know, they are very few, and it has become very difficult to work in this atmosphere for developers. So actually the regulator should have addressed all these issues as well. Online clearances, time-bound clearances, accountability to government authorities, and once the project is cleared and customers have put in their money, there should be no right on the part of any other channel to come and stop the work. So they should be actually facilitators and not strangulators. There have been now more than 50 strangulators around every single project.
Sanjay Dutt and Niranjan Hiranandani will bring you in. Sanjay Dutt first. Sanjay?
Alongside with the regulator.
Fair point. Sanjay Dutt.
Yes. I genuinely believe that while we talk about balancing, this act, bringing government into the regulatory body on the state level and make them answerable, I can assure you that the judicial system of this country, when it follows this act, and when they find that the consumer is very much, need to be compensated because of delay, and the developer has actually honored all its commitment, but for the fact that the government has not played its role or has imposed certain conditions after the approval or not granted occupancy certificate, the judicial system will bring the government in, and there would be some landmark judgment which will become a precedent for this with this industry, if not immediately 2 or 3 years from now, and you will have the inclusion. So while Maharashtra state government has done a great job, Right to Services Act, and this will have a huge impact, and it's a role model. Eventually it will happen in other states as well.
Niranjan Hiranandani, we had this conversation at the NAREDCO conference as well. If there is a real estate appellate tribunal, a buyer goes over saying, hey, you know what, I bought something, it hasn't been delivered. The developer will be summoned. The developer will say, I haven't got my permissions. I have all of my paperwork in place. The permission hasn't come. Automatically, shouldn't then the local authorities also be summoned by that court? While it's not part of the bill right now, like Sanjay points out, over a period of time, through a process of learning, won't that be an eventuality?
Yes, this is what we had requested the government and Mr. Venkaiah Naidu to add, that the regulator should also be able to summon the government approval authorities also to the court and give necessary direction for the purpose of giving approvals, because this is what we have found in many cases that the approving authority or the judiciary should be able to do. We don't see that as part of the bill, so because it's more to deal between the consumer and the developer rather than the consumer and the government. However, we hope that over a period of time, suo moto, the courts will take such a position that they can give directions where they find that the government approving authorities have been unfair or improper. And I think the time has come when that will also happen. But I guess, as you said earlier, the bad experience of the consumer has been really highlighted, and those things are affecting the people, as you have shown the recordings just now, and they are right. So I think we have to face the music at the initial stages, and over a period of time, I'm sure fair play will come into play. But we have to be cautious, and the government has to be very fair and equitable on this ground, because otherwise productivity will be affected. But I'm wishing it well, and now that the regulator is anyway in place, we'll have to face the music and do it. So let's do our best to make it successful.
Naveen Raheja, you just have to face the music for the first couple of years. Do you agree? I don't think there's a special choice.
I want to say something.
Yeah. Okay, Sanjay Dutt, go ahead.
See, developer alone cannot do, developer alone cannot construct,
consumer
developer
get their
alone cannot do
apartments on time.
everything.
One second.
You have to.
Naveen Raheja, go ahead.
Yeah, if you expect everything from developer is not God. You have to empower him, you have to facilitate him, you have to give him liberty to construct. So unless you have to give him infrastructure to construct, unless you give all these things and the authorities around you, which have to provide services, which have to provide water, electricity, roads,
Mr. Naveen Raheja, there have been people who've called on my show.
Unless you make Environment and Forest Ministry.
If there are people who've called on my show in the last 1 week who've said
Environment
that
and Forest Ministry, that in between you cannot do anything. You cannot bring in laws and put stoppers in between. You should be doing it when the clearances are being given at that time only.
All right, that's a suggestion we'll make to the government as well. That's a fair suggestion. But I just want to respond. I just want to respond to the fact that you said developers are not God. I'll have you know there are people who've called me from the NCR region in the last 1 week who said every time they've gone up to the developer and said, we're going to take you to court, he said, Jao court mera kuch nahi bigad sakta. So if developer is not God, I think maybe the developers should find out first that they're not God and they are subject to law. And maybe this is not a bad thing. Sanjay Dutt, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I wanted to, for the purpose of discussion for this panel, wanted to simplify our debate around this subject. Forget about what will get built on time or not, and the penalties on developers to make that happen. Let's look at apartments which are delivered. Apartments which are delivered with the promises that they will have electricity and water. Just two things, nothing else. Do you think this country is able to provide these two things across the country? The answer would be no, because we are living with tankers and polluted water being delivered to us at an exorbitant price. Should we accept that? And where was this government when they were sanctioning plans, not doing the density calculation and trying to figure out how will they provide the necessary infrastructure, basic electricity and water to begin with? And therefore, where will this government, when will this government be held accountable? So I think the subject is a lot more complicated, and that's why I believe eventually the government will be rolled into this, because you cannot escape from the fact that the government has sanctioned the project given the permission, and now there is no water in that society.
All right, that's a fair point, and we've had several instances of those as well from across the country. Buildings have come up, possession has been given, but the road has not been built, electricity not provided, or water not provided. There is a need here to bring local government and local authority under the purview of the law as well. That's something that's been made as a suggestion. But in the meantime, quick closing remarks, Niranjan Hiranandani, for the buyers out there, whether or not prices go up right now, there will be, of course, a step on the pedal from a developer's point of view to complete as much as possible in the next 1 year before RERA comes in. Will this actually mean that construction will be faster, at least for a year?
I hope so. I mean, it will be good for the developer as well as for the consumer if they can complete the projects early and in time. So I think it will be a good thing for them to precipitate that. But remember, there are so many constraints on the way for the purpose of getting the completion certificates, etc. But you're right. I'm sure that the developers will push their timelines in order to get more projects completed so that it can be over.
All right, Rohit Gera, closing statements. Of course, we've talked circles about the whole bill, but the truth is, the industry is just going to have to face the music until things settle down for the first 1 year. And maybe the pendulum is swinging, but that's because it was swung so far the other way until now.
So, Faye, I have one request of you. I think through the rest of these conversations, if you say most developers, you can say some developers. But I personally think it's really unfair when you say developers and you kind of brand everybody into the same category. So that's just a request. Just to use the terminology that doesn't put everybody into the same bucket. Certainly, I think projects will get done faster. The other big issue which I was wanting to point out is nobody really touched upon the fact that how will my occupancy certificate be actually delivered to me on time? This 2nd October stuff is all about getting my commencement certificate on time. But what Mr. Raheja also talked about was everything after the commencement certificate. There's no control on that as far as the bill is concerned, as far as the act is concerned, and I think there's a cause for concern there.
All right, Rohit, it's a fair point that you ask of me, and I'm glad that we're going to have a regulator in a year's time because we'll actually be able to tell the difference between good developers and bad, but currently
no,
that's...
I think you can, I'm sorry, I think you can tell the difference between good developers and bad developers even today. You don't need a regulator for that.
Really, Rohit, how would I know what the land titling is unless I have to RTI it from the local office?
Well,
how would I know?
Go ahead and do your homework, Faye. You will find a number of developers are doing a great job.
Tell me where the money has come from, where the land titling is, who's willing to share that kind of those kind of details.
Just go back and look at the track record of developers who've done a great job and who continue to do a great job even in this horrible market.
No, that's not fair. I mean, if you look at the NCR region, look at the kind of names that are being dragged to court right now.
But Faye, even you just said, even in the NCR region...
Let's take Unitech, for example. Rohit Gera,
you just said that even in the NCR region, there are those who are delivering their projects properly. That was one of your statements.
That is true. But
that's my only point. So don't brand everybody in the same manner. That's all I request.
Well, it brings us back to the same thing that I still think we deserve a regulator for exactly this point.
Oh, I agree. I completely agree with that.
The fact that we would not be able to see eye to eye, that the information in this industry that's currently very opaque is not available to us as customers, and until we have a regulator, until the pendulum is swung absolutely in the other direction, we have no hope for an even-Steven deal in the real estate industry when it comes to buying homes. We've run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening. Remember, if you're watching at home and if you have feedback or questions about anything you heard on the show, feel free to get in touch with us. You can reach me personally on Twitter. It'll be my pleasure to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Stay with Magic Bricks now.